3000.
What he's doing, my name's Maloney. This is the 3000 podcast. I'm joined today by a graffiti writer, Prod. Thanks for coming in, man.
No worries, thanks for having us. Yeah.
You have quite a long history. I'm keen to get into it. People love these graffiti writer episodes, so I'm stoked for you to come in. It's awesome. Let's kick things off where you kind of grew up and how you got involved into this graffiti world of Melbourne.
Yeah, cool. So I come from the Eastern Lines, Lilydale line, and in 1986 I started travelling on trains to school and that, a bit further in towards the city. And it was about halfway through 86 that there was a couple of guys in my class who wrote. They were just bombing every day sort of thing. So I just sort of caught on with them and started tagging. And yeah, it sort of went from there sort of thing.
There wasn't much in the way of pieces then. It was mostly just tags that you saw. There were some sort of pieces around on the line?
Yeah, there were heaps of pieces, but I didn't really know much about graph until sort of say, 87, getting right into it sort of thing. But I didn't really do that much in between 86 and 89. I just sort of caught trains, did a few tags here and there, tried to meet people and that sort of thing, yeah.
Yeah. And so then were there people that you looked up to that were sort of big on that line?
Oh, there were heaps of people.
Yeah?
Heaps of people. Like you had USA crew, DMA crew was starting. There was a lot of graph. Yeah.
And so you started with your mates at school doing sort of little runs on the train, tags here and there. What kind of markers are you using? Whatever you get your hands on?
Yeah, pretty much. We were using like tiny little markers, and then it went to Artline 100s, and then got the first pilot and 20 mils, that sort of thing. And yeah, it was just what it was.
It was. And your sort of early sort of high school years, I'm guessing?
Yeah. So year 7.
Year 7, so 13, 14 years old.
Yeah.
And what word do you start writing as a young year 7, year 8 kid?
So I had heaps of crappy little tags. But yeah, as it went on, I wrote sort of trade and then roster and mature. But these tags I never got up. I just sort of doing 1 or 2 loops a day and just
Finding your feet.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. And then, so you start to get a little bit older. I guess you start to get a bit more confident. You start to get up a little bit more with these early words. Is that the next sort of evolution in the story?
Yeah, sort of. I didn't really sort of start getting up till the 90s, early 90s, so 1990 itself. But yeah, it was sort of meeting people and just trying to just meet people sort of thing. So learn how they bombed, see how they bombed, and then just copy them and what they do.
Yep. Cans are replacing markers at this sort of stage?
Well, I didn't really use paint until 89, 90. Yep. I was more just markers. I had the 18 mil pilot pens and 20 mil markers, yeah.
Yeah. And so then 89, you start to get your hands on some paint, and that changes the game a bit?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, start doing throw-ups on trains and yeah, just getting into it, do field-in throw-ups and that sort of thing. Yeah. Start hitting yards, but not really hitting them too much, just every now and then. Hooked up with old mates from Lilydale, started bombing with them, and then hooked up with these 2 dudes, Summon and Sirius, and sort of my first bombing partners, and yeah, we just sort of started trashing trains, heading up the Belgrave line as well, and into Box Hill, meeting people in Box Hill and that, and yeah.
Were they, so you form a crew with these guys, or are they just sort of partners?
Just partners, no real crew sort of thing. In 89, PBP started, Pup and Billy Posse, and
yep.
I was probably in the first 20 dudes in that crew. And as soon as that started, that's when I sort of all kicked off with bombing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you've been given the Prod name at this stage?
Well, no. So halfway through 1990, or not halfway through, about April, there was an old writer from up my line. He used to write Prod. He'd given it to a dude. That dude hadn't used it much, so he sort of took it back. I asked him for it, and yeah, started doing throw-ups from there on that day.
That's pretty cool. So you're like, this dude that you've sort of gifted this name isn't doing it justice. Let me see what I can do with it.
Yeah.
And he was cool.
Like, so the tag already had heaps of prestige. Like, the dude who wrote it for a year, and he just absolutely smashed trains with it. And I knew by getting that tag that I'd have to do the same, if not more, sort of thing. Like,
You forced your hand to level up.
yeah, because it's sort of standard of the, like, if I get someone's tag, I'm going to try and smash it more than they did.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And that's something, look, I'm not involved in the graffiti scene, but that's something I guess I'm tipping is kind of lost today, that someone gives you a name and sort of says, go with this.
Well,
or it was more of a thing back then?
No, it was more like these days you don't like. Sorry. We'd watch the trains. We'd see heaps of trains. So everything that dudes do on the trains, we'd be seeing going up and down. These days you don't really have that sort of thing with the trains, and that it's a different scene in a way. It's totally different. Yeah.
Yeah. But the gifting of the name thing, is that still something that happens?
Yeah, it is. It is. Like, I got mates who, pass their tag on to younger guys, and those guys are smashing it now. So it still happens. But it's
So say 1990, you get given the name Prod. You're like, I've got to make this really. I've got to push it. It's pushing you out of your what you were sort of doing out of your comfort zone. You're going to different lines, and you really feel like you've got to give the name justice.
Well, I had a tag before Prod, which was Prague, and I started bombing more with that. But then, as soon as I got Prod, I just knew I had to sort of get up as much as I could.
And acquiring supplies in the 1990, how's that happening?
Well, paint was just so easy to rack back then. Getting paint was nothing. It was just figuring.
Hardware stores and that sort of thing.
Oh, like McEwen's, like Coles and Kmart had paint.
Really?
Yeah, and
Wow.
heaps of dudes used their paint because it was just so easy to get.
So it's just on the shelves, like
on the shelf,
like fucking next to the batteries. Or
yeah, it was nothing. It was in the back, sort of thing. They didn't really watch the paint too much. Like, it was just so easy to get. Like, you go in and get 4 cans or however many you want to get at a time. Like, it was no problem.
Yeah.
And then once using paint, it's more. I didn't like doing inside trashes with paint because I did heaps, but it just because the paint stunk and the fumes would stay in the carriage. Whereas if you use the marker still stinks, but it dries up quicker, and it's just a different medium sort of thing.
Yeah, and you're trashing it anyway, but it kind of feels a little bit more respectful with the marker, though. You know what I mean?
They both had their parts, sort of thing. Like so markers were just sneakier and easier. They didn't rattle. They didn't make heaps of fumes, that sort of thing. You could do sneaky tags without hearing the paint, like, sort of spraying, and it was just easier with marker sometimes.
I guess if you're doing loops and running up and down that line, if you do it with the can, you're kind of making yourself pretty red hot. That your day's going to be over pretty quickly because they're going to start paying attention more than with the marker tags.
Well, because there was heaps of graph on trains, they couldn't really pick
how fresh it was.
how fresh it was unless they saw you doing it, or they just smelt the paint in the carriage. If you're doing a run up on the outside of a train like that, by the time it hits the next station, it's pretty dry. There's no real smell from it.
Insides are different, though.
Insides are totally different, unless you're on an Hitachi where you can pull down all the windows when you're smashing it and let the fumes sort of leave. Like, it's completely different,
So this journey goes from 1990, 1991, you're still same sort of thing? Have you come into been jumped into any crews? Has anyone sort of, come onto the scene that you're riding with more and more?
In 1990 we did. I just smashed it heaps, and I'd meet heaps from being in PBP and then going to a school in Glenferrie, which was sort of a rider school at that time. Just meeting all those dudes and just seeing everyone just bombing. You just learn sort of quickly where to do run-ups, which stations to hit, which side of the train do hangouts on, and that sort of thing. Like, you sort of progress if you're hanging around, but if you're not there, you're not seeing as much. So, which was more the early years. Like, I'd be doing loops. At our school, we could look out the window and see the trains going by. So if we saw a panel, half the class would stand up, because in year 7, that probably half the blokes in the class were riding. By year 8, half of them dropped off, and so on and so on. In '88, me and this guy who wrote Humbug, he came to our school, and me and him were doing loops. We got picked up by transits, bombing a carriage, and sort of after that we got a caution, and sort of took 6 months off from there. And then in late '88, he got a legal with the Knox Council, which was doing the bike path to Knox City.
Yep.
So we got this. We were doing the bridges and that, and doing pieces on the bridges for the council. Other dudes would rock up, and they just this dude Ark rocked up one day and just came in, grabbed all the paint, and then just bailed. Like, didn't do nothing on the wall and that. It was just it was just a rort for him. So
Yeah.
but meeting other dudes while doing that as well. Met this dude who wrote Alias, and he had a train accident in '89, lost both his legs. So, yeah, meeting him, he was always a friendly sort of dude. It was just good meeting dudes. If you got along with them, they'd tell you where to go to get paint, where to go to get ink, where to do run-ups, and then you'd see dudes online as well, hiding in bushes, and you walk past them, you wouldn't see them, they call out to you, you go, "Oh, fuck, what are they doing?" Like, "Oh, yeah, that's where they've been hitting it." But there were so many riders to sort of learn from and see what they're doing. But just as a teen, a young teen, it was hard for me to sort of get out late at night. My stepdad was pretty strict on that sort of thing. And yeah, you just sort of learn as you go.
Yeah. And so obviously there's a lot happening on the line. You've got subway art as well to sort of learn from, your movies and that sort of thing,
Yeah,
or you just
yeah.
what is immediately around you?
Well, at the start, it's immediately what's around you, and the people around you sort of giving you a bit of knowledge about what graph is, who's up, who's the kings of the line, and that sort of thing. And when spray can art, subway art came out, that sort of changed. Sort of people would be using that as sort of their guide to how to do pieces.
Reference
And
point.
yeah. But yeah, it's all a learning curve. Like, yeah.
And for you at this stage in the late 80s, early 90s, is it about the piece, or it's just about the bombing and getting up as much as you can?
Well, it's about both, really.
Yep.
They were both sort of hand in hand. But I wasn't really a really good piecer. I tried and that sort of thing. The more you sketch, the better you get, sort of thing. But there were dudes who just had artistic talent, and they were doing mad pieces, where the dudes with average talent like me who just do average sort of pieces, sort of thing. Like, yeah.
Yeah. So it was as much about the art for you as the destruction?
Yeah, no. So in 1990, me and this guy, Lemon, I ran into him at Ringwood, and he's like, "Come down Lewdale, we'll go do a panel." And I was like, "All right." So we go to Target, we get our paint, we go to Lewdale. I did that was just after I got prod, and I used to do flowers as my O's in prod throw-ups. So I was doing this prod panel with flower. He was doing a lemon, but a backwards one, and we're sitting there, and he's like, "Prod, get out the art, go." And I'm like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Seki is on the other side of the train." I'm like, "Bullshit." And then he's like, "We've got to go." And I look under the train, and Seki's right there. He's banging his torch on the other side of the train. And yeah. So we just bailed from there. And then the next day, I go to school. I go to Richmond Station to see if my paddle's running and that. I run into this dude who he wrote Prono, and he's like, "Oh, did you do paddles last night?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Did you get photos?" I'm like, nah, someone will get photos, because at that stage, your panels might run for a couple of weeks.
Weeks?
Yeah.
Wow.
And previous to that, panels would run in '89. You'd see panels run for a month or so. It was completely different.
Yeah.
But so anyway, we're standing there, and he's like, "Well, yeah." He's like, "Did you get photos?" I'm like, "No. Yeah. I thought someone would get photos or something." He's like, "Well, when the train got to Hursty, they threw acid on it, and then within about 15 minutes, that train came in, and the panel that was there had just been acided. Like, it was just all the colours were just at the bottom of the train. So it was completely gone. And that was sort of where part of where I went, "Oh, well, fuck this, I'm going to bomb."
Yep.
Like, you need bomb trains to get the panels running. Panels were still important, but it was just
So I guess you've got more longevity bombing the train because if you do a panel, an actual piece on it, they're more likely to fucking
to take the train off, clean it, or just chuck out its
because that's
passing on.
really the transits don't want to see that. They're like, this is way too much advertising for
Yeah,
those
yeah.
cunts. So get rid of it. But if you
And-
chuck some tags, they might stay.
Yeah. So I mean, throw-ups would still be running. There was still a lot of old riders at the start of '90, or old-ish riders who were just smashing trains still. But the panels and that they started to take off. They had a different buffing scheme in '90 from what I saw. So they had groups of people hop in a minibus and go to Ringwood Yards and Lilydale Yards, and they'd be cleaning the trains from graff and that. They sort of had it was a 3-day buffing sort of thing. They wanted to get graff off the trains as quickly as they could to discourage us from going out and bombing.
Yep.
But in a way that sort of made us go a bit harder sort of thing in bombing, because to lose that part of the scene was, it wasn't good sort of thing. Yeah, that's where a lot of riders made their name, and there were a lot of bombers out there who were sort of forgotten these days, but they still did heaps.
Do you want to mention a couple of them while you've got a chance?
Fucking heaps. I could go through heaps. Yeah. Jeez.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just thought if they are forgotten, might be a good time to sort of say some people that you kind of respected.
All right, so you got dudes from Camberwell and that, like Hess, who was a mad bomber. Worm was a mad bomber. You still got dudes actually bombing today, like Note and Saipan. There's so many riders you go through.
And this is sort of part of the reason why I love doing these episodes, but it wasn't that well documented back then because of the time frame. So it's cool to sort of talk about this stuff because you're doing pieces, other people are doing pieces. No one's really taken that many flicks. Like, I'm sure it's happening, but you're not thinking about that. That's not the first thing you think of.
Yeah, well, a lot of the panels we did, no one would take a camera because people would go out the next day and expect to see the panels running, but they wouldn't be running.
Yeah. So, but I guess some people that probably aren't deep in the scene, they're documenting it more than the dudes that are actually fucking doing it.
Yeah, so you had dudes taking photos. That was happening a fair bit, but not of really bombed trains. Like, it was...
You took it for granted, I guess. You thought, oh, this isn't going to end, so I'll just paint another one.
Well, exactly like doing that panel in Lilydale. Like, I thought I'd see that panel or someone would see that panel and get photos, but no, it didn't happen. It's got acid chucked on it in Hurstbridge before we even had the chance to sort of get a photo. And cameras, like these days, you just get your phone, you just take photos of everything, whereas back then you needed a camera or a disposable camera or something.
And you don't want to keep incriminating shit on yourself either.
Yeah. So if you got picked up with night shots in the yard, you could probably expect to get a raid sort of thing. And night shots just being night shots in the yard itself. Like, it's pretty hard to sort of say that it wasn't in the yard or something when it's right there. But it was really different. Like, you had mad other dudes like Bruce MSA. He was smashing it heaps. NASA smashing it heaps. Dudes who aren't around like Pace, P135. He's later on. He's like 91, 92. But so unless someone was there with a camera, you wouldn't really see this stuff. And I had heaps of photos, but over the years, it's been 30 years, I'd just lose me photos. Mates would give me photos, I'd lose them. Like, it's just,
And even now, with this sort of digital age that we're used to, you see some of these photos and you're like, if you were going to make a magazine or a book or something, they're not great image quality as well because the megapixels and all that shit.
Yeah, so a lot of dudes get photos of the train as it's running, and it'd be 50-50 whether that'd be a good photo or a shit photo coming out, and the quality is so different as well.
So at this stage, we're going through the sort of linear early 90s. Explain to us what it's like going into a train yard. Obviously, there's no cameras back then, or minimal cameras.
So all right. So I go to this funny thing that happened in Belgrave. I get off the train one day in Belgrave and I look around. There's heaps of transit cops on the platform. The train's been burnt down by the Hitachi is sitting under the bridge. Has been burnt down. The last carriage and part of the second last carriage was just totally mashed. Like the lead or the steel, from the windows is on the actual platform. It's melted that much. And there were things happening like this that in 1990 they sort of upgraded the security. So a lot of yards didn't have fences, or the fences they had were just negligible. They were just ripped apart and big holes in the fences. So for about 6 months or so in 90, you could go into like a yard, you could utterly smash it. And we didn't really think of security being there or anything. It was just, we're going in. Yeah. Like, if we see someone chases us, yeah, it happens. But like with Lemon, when I was piecing with him, the security guard's right there, just smashing his torch on the train, sort of telling us to get out the yard. Like,
different time, I guess.
Yeah.
No, but I guess it's hard for people now that didn't live through that era of graffiti to even comprehend no fences or just shit fences, you know?
And there's no mobile phone, so there's no sort of like for Secchi, you'd have to go back to the station and call them, and then they'd call the cops or whatever to come down and check the yard. If you had a transit blitz on your line, you're really taking a chance if you're going to hit those yards at night. You'd have to go somewhere else to do stuff. But yards in 90 were easy, but I didn't really use them too much. I more sort of did a lot of run-ups and just smash moving trains. I just see so many run-up spots that you could sneak out from, and the lighting was all different. It was a lot darker on the stations. Train stations were utterly bombed, most of them. Places like Lewdale weren't, but the dead sort of stations in between were trashed. Yeah.
That was like back when they all looked like sort of brown toilet block sort of scenarios.
Yeah, and they'd have tags on there from 5-10 years before, sort of thing, from bogans just writing Wazza and Bazza or whatever to actual writers who are just coming in and putting their name up on it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of...
When you said that your school back then, there was a lot of writers. Outside of school, did people understand the lifestyle? Did they get it? Or was it something that you would, if you met a girl or you met some dudes that weren't into writing, did they kind of understand, or you just had to keep to your own circles?
Not really. Like, so for me, if I went to Box Hill, there'd be heaps of writers there, heaps of kids.
It was just the norm.
Yeah, it was sort of the norm for that. And in class, you'd get a sort of 50-50 response. Some people like it, some people just hated it, and that was what it was.
Yeah.
But there'd be a lot of riders on each sort of every couple of stations who'd be hanging out and doing their loops, and just be meeting them or whatever. Yeah.
And territorial, are people like, this is our line, and then they, like, I'm sure that happens a bit.
Yeah. Look, that sort of more sort of culture came into it a little bit later, sort of thing. I think for me, I could travel up and down the Lewdale Belgrave line to Camberwell and not really have an issue. Of course, there were some dudes I'd have beef with or that sort of thing, but that just happens. In '89, like with the crews and the gangs, that's when they started getting, for me, a bit more. This is our yard. This is, don't go in this yard, that sort of thing. Don't get caught bombing around here by us, we'll roll you or whatever. But as you get more known, dudes get more lenient, sort of with
more respectful.
Yeah, more respectful. And they know what you're doing. They let you get away with stuff. You couldn't really go down another line and not expect trouble. Like if I went down Dandenong or somewhere else, like nah, you just wouldn't do it. Like you wouldn't take a chance.
So even if you were doing like trackside, you're bombing trackside or doing tags, on that other line, you'd be hesitant. Yeah,
be a bit hesitant. Like dudes would go dudes earlier than me would travel around the city. But as it got to the sort of 89, 90, dudes were more, this is our yard, like stay out sort of thing. And even if dudes thought you were doing their yard, they'd have a little beef with you until you sort of sorted it out sort of thing. But in 1990, I really only did Lewdale a couple of times. And a lot of it was bombing from a station. Like we'd, me, Sock and this dude Nessel, we'd have all the Lewdale dudes, and we'd get them to stand sometimes on the platform to block the guards from seeing us, and then we'd just do top to bottom throw-ups on the platy and that. We'd go to the Pigeon Club and pinch their little horses, the stands sort of thing, the two steel stands with the 2x4 or whatever. We stand on that and we'd try to do top to bombers on the other side of on the track side of the platform. And it it was So we do a lot of bombing just by doing that, doing back-ons and not really middle-ons. And guards were swapping between the third car and the sixth car. It just depended on which time of year.
Yeah. But I guess when you're doing that sort of outside stuff, even if you are doing it from your line, those trains are running on every line.
Yeah,
so people are seeing you everywhere.
Yeah, trains are just run everywhere, and that was a good thing about it. Like, so you do, like, I remember one day going to Glen Ferry and doing about 15 run-ups in Delicious Red and not seeing one of them. And then I keep bombing. And then I'd say to someone who was from the west, I'd be going, they must be buffing hard. Like, I'm not seeing a thing. And those would say, well, you got throw-ups in all our yards. And that's because the trains that travel over their side, then maybe they go north. Some trains would just go back and forth between your line to another line, then back again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're not getting buffed; they're just going to different lines, and you're
Well, a bit of both, sort of thing. So probably like that when I went out and did those throw-ups, probably maybe 2 or 3 of them sort of survived that initial. But as you do more trains, then you get more numbers of trains running. So eventually, after about 3 weeks or so, you'd see your trains coming back down your line and that, and you'd just be like, fuck, like, yeah. It's just the start of it. I'm starting to get up, so I'll keep bombing.
And that, to explain that kind of feeling to people that don't do it, that is kind of like a rush, I guess you would liken to, like, gambling or drugs or something like that. Is that what it is?
Yeah, for sure. That's exactly what it is. You'd sort of be a bit disappointed you're not seeing nothing. Then after doing 2 or 3 weeks of bombing, maybe 5 weeks of bombing, you start seeing a lot of your trains coming back, and you're hitting the train for the third time.
And that gives you an extra rush.
Yeah, because you know you're getting up, you know you're bombing heaps, and So in '90, when I started thinking I was getting up, I wasn't actually getting up by standard sort of thing. I'd be up a little bit, but it wasn't until mid-90s when other people sort of acknowledge, oh, you're getting up. They're seeing a lot of your trains run. Yeah.
And that is like half a decade of consistent bombing. So you're talking from 89 to mid-90s. That's a long time.
Yeah. So
going pretty hard.
Yeah. It was just love of it. I just loved smashing trains. It was just day to day.
Yep.
In '90, I took a month off in January. I went to Sydney, did a few tries, just bombing up there, and come back and then started bombing again.
Yep.
And between about halfway through '90, when they were really cleaning up the trains, you could really notice it towards the end of '90 that your trains weren't running unless you were doing heaps. And then to start '91, it just felt like all the trains were clean. Because over Christmas, to take time off and that sort of thing.
But I guess it's a numbers game, because if you hit the train so hard, they can't take them all off to clean them.
No, that's it. So you like I was saying before, out of those, so you'd be bombing for 2 weeks or so, or 3 weeks, before you'd see the results coming back in. And then after about 4 or 5 weeks, you'd have a fair few trains running, because you'd lose more than half of your first trains you bombed. Like, they just get buffed.
They just don't last.
Yeah, and they had more buffers in '90. Like I was saying, they were driving out to yards and that sort of thing, cleaning trains in the yards. But how long they kept it up, not really sure.
So you mentioned that you took a little bit of time off, a month or so, to go to Sydney. How did the scene differ in the 1990 time, Sydney to Melbourne?
Oh, so I think each time I went to Sydney and just bombed up there, I'd say that Sydney was about 6 months or so ahead of us in the buffing and about security, as in fences and that sort of thing.
It was a bigger city then as well, and I guess,
So in '89, the New York Transit, the Sydney, the State Transit Authority of Sydney or whatever it is, and I think Malaysia or somewhere, they got together and had a big conversation about how to deter people from hanging out at train stations, how to get rid of graffiti, all that sort of thing. And I think Sydney just implemented a lot quicker than what Melbourne did. Yeah.
and that impacts the whole scene.
Yeah. So, I mean, when they took blue trains when they took them out of service, I think a few dudes dropped out then, because that was their scene. And then as it went on, when they introduced more buffing, like dudes at school would would say, I'm not bombing no more. And you'd be like, oh, fuck, I need you bombing so I can get up, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like, the more people there are. But there are a lot of younger riders who've always sort of stepped up as well, and taken over from the older riders. It's just how it evolves, sort of.
And the mentality, and this is easy for me to say who I wasn't part of it, but if you say, I'm not doing it anymore because they're making it too hard and they're buffing them too quickly, they're winning. They're winning the fight, you know?
Yeah. And plus their time's gone as well. They've been bombing for 3-4 years, and that's probably like the sort of super bombers and that would bomb for that long, and then you had dudes more concentrating on doing their pieces and panels and that sort of thing. So they'd sort of stop the tagging and that sort of to improve themselves in other ways.
Yep. I guess in the timeline of, you know, Melbourne or Australian graffiti, it does sort of change a bit in the early 90s because it moves away from bombing and trashing more to panels and pieces and even trackside pieces.
Yeah. So I guess as time went on, people got more confident with what they were doing and doing more pieces. There were heaps of pieces in the mid-'80s, so not mid-'80s, that I saw from about 87 to 90. There were just heaps of different riders doing pieces. But there's still a big emphasis on bombing trains. You sort of could and couldn't get accepted if you didn't know anyone. Like, you had to sort of bomb to get known, and then you progress from there. You go do your piece or whatever, or you piece at the same time, and your pieces get better because you're seeing more, you're intaking more, and you're just learning.
Yeah. And that's all part of the evolution of the craft, I guess.
Yeah.
You know?
So in '94 or so, when like Melbourne had its own style, Sydney had its own style, Queensland, Adelaide all had their own sort of styles.
I don't want to cut you off because this is really cool, but I want to know from someone inside, what was Melbourne style like? What was Sydney style like? What was Brisbane style like? If they're all kind of different.
Just the little differences. So you'd have your top riders who'd be out there doing pieces, and they'd set the sort of standards for style and that sort of thing. And everyone's a bit different, even line to line. But as Melbourne dude, you'd see Melbourne dude piecing and that sort of thing. Sydney's got its own independent sort of style. But then when magazines like Blitzkrieg came out and dudes were coming over from Germany and that sort of thing, they'd bring their European style over to us. And
that was more Melbourne-ish, do you think, or is that more Sydney?
No, it's totally different. The European style was completely different from us, sort of thing. We didn't really have fat caps and that sort of thing to use. We'd make our own fat caps, but unless you knew someone or you'd been somewhere and got some fat caps and brought them back, you're just using the shit cans with shit nozzles, and now graph paint is made for graffiti sort of thing. The supplies you can get these days, it's just you walk in a shop, whereas we didn't really have that. We'd sort of we'd find tucks and nibs and that sort of thing, or nibs which were good. We'd try and keep them for the next time and that, and it was just completely different. Yeah.
And then, so just to differentiate the kinds of style, Melbourne was more artistic-ish. Sydney was more just like, people use the word public style for Sydney.
Yes.
Do you agree with that?
Sort of, yeah, sort of. It was like, so I look at dudes like Mac and that from Sydney, and they sort of have that Sydney style. There was dudes like Unique from Queensland and that, and Tense and that from Adelaide, who sort of would be the mentors for that sort of style in the area. Melbourne had a heap of different riders, which were up the top.
Yeah, and even like the people that were right in the scene then, they tell me that you could tell an E or an S, and you could be like, "Oh, these guys from that line," you know, like that. That's subtle, you know.
Yeah, and even in '92, I met a couple of dudes from Adelaide, and I was in Rack and Paint in Southlands, and I just look up and I see this dude wearing an Umbro. And I just knew straight away he was from Adelaide. So I just like, where are you from? What do you write? And he was from Adelaide. So we went and did panels, and
Adelaide's that's a different place altogether from a graffiti standpoint. I think they've only got like 5 or 6 train lines.
Yeah,
it's not big, but but they love the graffiti culture.
Yeah. Like, and I just think it's something which caught on with us, and it's something which caught on with them over there, and just everywhere. It was so the people, like, sorry.
You're right. No.
So people in, say, Melbourne, we had like a lot of bogans hanging around the stations from where I was from. So the crew that came in, that was hanging around Ringwood, CW, STR, they sort of took over Croydon, and yeah, it was just it was.
Well, so you obviously want to get up a lot in your own city, but then I guess once you start to really notice your stuff's getting out there, you go to Sydney as well. You go to Adelaide. Is it? You think fuck, all cities one thing? I want to try and fucking go all over the shop.
No, I just wanted to go up to Sydney and see what their scene was like, and see whether they bomb trains up there and that sort of thing. And a mate was going up, so I went up with him and hung around Bondi Junction, and that did loops in their underground, and yeah, it was just different trains.
Yeah, well, they've got the triple-decker train, so I guess there's more blind spots to chuck insides, is there?
Yeah, but at the same time, like I love doing my hangouts and that sort of thing. So, and I knew in Sydney it's sort of dangerous to do hangouts. Like you'd hear of people hitting things on the site. Yeah, just I'm not sure whether they're weights or whether they're actual poles or whatever. But so when I was in Sydney doing the Bondi loops, you sort of be looking ahead, sort of to see what's coming in your way, it might hit you and that, but yeah, it's different. It's different. Yeah,
Totally different. So you come back to Melbourne after seeing that, and it's not an international trip, but it is just opens your eyes a little bit to see how they do it in other places.
Yeah, and what their style's like, and how many people are hanging out compared to down here. But like I said, Sydney was early on. They buffed a lot more than what we did down here, or we got done to us down here. But yeah, coming back to Melbourne, trains were sort of semi-clean, and then bombing them from a semi-clean state to smashing them again. And you'd have other riders just making their entrance into the scene or whatever who, they were just smashing trains as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of the old riders were out doing panels, still hanging around, still at Richmond, watching trains, all that sort of thing. Yeah.
It's crazy to think now in 2024 that Richmond Station back then in 1990 hasn't really changed much at all, has it? Still the fucking same.
I was there yesterday, and I was there with a mate, and I'm just looking at where the old seats were on platform 9 and 10, where everyone would sit. I'd hardly go into Richmond. I'd go in there every now and then when I felt that I was up on trains, and just check out how many trains they got running, that sort of thing. Yeah.
It hasn't changed much at all, though.
No, it's the same station. It's just had seats taken out and different seats put in other places. Yeah. And always on that platform 9 and 10 and go sort of stand there and just watch a train or two and then move on. Yeah,
meeting point.
Yeah, the old meeting point on where the seats were. Yeah.
So getting into this chronological journey, mid-90s, do you start to think about graffiti differently? You're finishing school, I guess, now, sort of as well?
Yeah, I'm still at school. Like, so I went that school. I went to I sort of wagged heaps to go bombing. So I stayed out of class, sort of thing, and do it the next year. But I do the same shit the next year. I just go out and bombing and hanging around, that sort of thing. And then yeah.
So then, what happens after you sort of finish school?
Oh, I just kept bombing. Like, yeah, I didn't sort of progress on. I just kept smashing trains. Like,
Keep it more and more and more.
So in 91, when I get in a crew, TFA, with Flick and Rabbit, we were bombing heaps. I'll go into this little story here.
Yeah.
We're down the Elmain line, we're doing heaps of loops. Rabbit had been in WA for a year, so when he came back, I'd met him in 88 in Box Hill. We got chased off a train, and then by Maori, and then I go to Box Hill to meet him. I see him and Gasp. They help on a train, so I jump on with them. And Gasp walks up to some dude sitting there going, "Do you like graph?" And he's like, "No, man, no, I don't." He's like, Gasp's like, "Well, bad luck. We're going to bomb a train anyway. What are you going to do about it?" sort of thing. And just watching that, that's how you just take over the train, sort of thing. Like, you just own it. Like,
he was just a suit or something, or just a regular guy.
Just a regular dude sitting there, and but there wasn't. There were 3 kids on the train. There wasn't much he's going to do, sort of thing. Like, roll the dice. But yeah.
Did you ever get some of those sort of vigilante people saying, "Fucking stop doing"?
Oh, heaps. Yeah, heaps. You'd always have to look through the carriage and sort of assess who's going to step up and who's going to just be quiet and not care about it. Because a lot of people didn't want impacting on them, didn't want to sort of step up. They just let it go, let it happen.
Yeah, I'll get off at the next station.
Yeah,
Fucking go about my day.
Yeah. And don't have to deal with these kids.
Yeah,
Like,
but I could imagine you get a few heroes that are going into the city to work or whatever, and they're like, I don't want you defacing our property.
yeah. So we'd either get chased off the train by them, or
Stand your ground.
stand your ground. But it's more sort of you'd more bail because you wouldn't want to get caught, grabbed by these dudes, and then you're gonna be fucked. Like, yeah.
So mid-90s, are they still selling paint at fucking the supermarkets? And
Yeah,
stuff like that?
yeah.
Really?
So the whole time from 1994, like, yeah, Kmart sold paint. I'm pretty sure Coles still sold paint. Target, yeah, auto shops, all that sort of thing. It wasn't locked down. It was still in the same spots that it always was. But you'd have store seckies. If they saw you go to the paint, they knew, like, you're going to probably pick a couple of cans and bail with it, sort of thing. Yeah.
Because there's a few sort of different things that happened that changed the direction of where graffiti goes. I guess one is buffing the trains a lot.
Yeah.
And then a bit later in the 90s is the paint gets a lot more red hot and that becomes harder as well.
Well, it sort of was, but it was always easy. Like, if you go to one store and there's techies watching it, or the people working there are watching it, you just go to another store. And
Numbers game.
yeah, so there were so many, like every Target, every Coles, every Kmart had paint, and then you could go to Leffler's in the city and get your Tuxons if you wanted, but you'd have to buy them. They'd stand right next to you when you're looking at the paint. They'd only let a certain amount of people in the room with the paint. Yeah, that was...
So that's like an art supply joint.
Oh, shit, I don't know what that was. I think it was a shoe store or something. I'm
And
not
they
sure.
sold paint.
Yeah, Tuxons and yeah.
Strange, isn't it?
Because it was, you'd have all the inks there and that sort of thing as well. So you shoe dyes and all that sort of thing, as well as the Tuxon and Warproo. Even Myers sold paint in the city. Yeah. Like, we'd go in and we'd just bag rack, fill it up bags, and just walk out there because Myers was dead easy. Like, at the start, when you're wearing a flanny and just shitty shoes and that, you'd have to go in to somewhere like Myers and get your Country Road, get your Jag, whatever you're going to wear. And as soon as you got that sort of that dress up, you could go anywhere. And at the start, people wouldn't look twice at you, but as it went on, they sort of realised, these kids are fucking, like, how can kids from Croydon be wearing all this expensive shit? Like, just didn't make sense.
Was there a bit of a rider's uniform back then? You saw someone, you looked at their clothes and you go, fuck, yeah.
Well, when Air Max came out, that was one of the big things. Everyone had to have Air Max or Structures or Spans or whatever, Nike Airs there were, and yeah, it was. But shoes and that were so easy to get. Everything was really pretty easy to get. They put beepers on them and colour tags, but you could just snap them off in the store or break them off when you got out, sort of thing. They were real easy to get off. Yeah, they'd have the colour tags on the tongue of the shoe, and you just put a knife down and kick it down and just snap the pins and take the colour tag off and throw it away. Yeah.
And if dudes bought their shoes, would you be like, what are you buying them for, man? That's not how you acquire your clothes.
Yeah, sorta. Like, if you were all right at racking that, you wouldn't need to, but obviously not everyone is confident enough to go in and rack shoes.
Confidence, isn't it, really?
Yeah. And it's just that learning thing. Like, once you learn, oh, fuck, this is easy, like, you sort of have that semi-expectation that it's going to be easy everywhere, which it sort of was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cameras everywhere now.
Yeah. You walk up the street, you're on 50 cameras, sort of thing. It's amazing. And even people's front doors, everything has cameras on it. Streets now, each time I come back to Melbourne, I'm like, fuck, this place has got more cameras. Like, it's just, how dudes get away with shit these days. It's just raw. It's just raw. Like,
So the city in the 90s was very different as well. Like, because you're talking, heroin was a thing a lot. Like, it was big, late 80s, early 90s. You know, ice and that sort of thing wasn't there.
No, that wasn't there. You'd have speed and that sort of shit. So when heroin sort of came in, I'd say 91, 92, in a big way, a lot of riders were sort of transgressing between being riders and being sort of crims, and then a lot of them ended up getting on the heroin and dropping off riding, and
because I guess you've already got that sort of criminal element to it, but then when you're riding, you're only really worried about acquiring paint. When you start getting the drugs get involved, you need to acquire money to get your drugs, and that changes it. So people go from being crims to support their graffiti habit to be criminals to support their drug habit.
Yeah, it's weird. It's because you got a lot of people who are out there racking their paint and that sort of thing. A lot of riders, and then suddenly they're getting into drugs. They're racking video cameras and that sort of thing, selling them off for cameras or anything, clothes, shoes, whatever, just to make that extra cash to go and get their hit or whatever. And you'd hear of dudes using like $600 a day, $1,000 a day worth of gear, and you'd be like, how the fuck do they? How does that happen? Like, and then you see your mates going through it, and it's like, oh yeah, right. So they need more, or they need better, or yeah.
I remember being at the sale yards in the mid-90s, and there'd be a lot of heroin users would come in there and just sort of hang around. And one dude said to me one day, I was just sitting there, chilling out, and he goes, "Oh man, I've got an $800 a day habit."
Yeah.
And he goes, "If I didn't put it into my arm," he goes, "I'd be the most intelligent crim." But he goes, "I don't have anything to show for it. This is my day-to-day life." I'm like, that's fucked.
Yeah, even us. I mean, we chuff deep, so we go out and make whatever money to get our quarter or whatever, and just cigars or whatever, and munchies and that sort of shit. But yeah, mate Merritt turned around to me one day. He goes, "Think of all the money we'd have if we didn't." But the other side of that is you wouldn't be out there doing that crime in the first place to be making all that money. And a lot of the people who were on the gear did a lot of raw shit. Started. So you'd have, your mates who were just getting into it, being a young teen sort of thing, they'd just be out there racking their inks or paint and marks and that, shoes, whatever. And as they're progressing, they're then getting more expensive items to go and sell and get rid of. And
yeah, because I guess that the graffiti racking is a bit of a gateway into larger scale stuff if you go down that route.
And you don't really realise it at the start when you're out there doing it. You're just sort of getting what you need for that day, whether it be paint or whatever, and then you think, I'll get something for some chuff or whatever, but then other dudes are out there, it becomes their whole day, it becomes their whole life sort of thing, just the cycle of going and making money, selling that shit, getting gear, doing the same
Every
shit
day's
over
the same.
and over. Yeah.
And I guess some people manage to still do their graph as well, but most of them, they fall by the wayside if they get into that sort of shit, eh?
Yeah, so, pretty much.
I guess it's hard for people to like. I think now with ice being a lot more prevalent than fucking heroin is, that leans into people doing more stuff because it stimulates them. They're out there. They fucking don't stop.
Yeah.
But if you're doing heroin in the 90s, you're not thinking about going and painting a piece. You're just staying in the abandoned warehouse doing fuck all.
Yeah, a lot of dudes did, but a lot of dudes who love graph would still get out there and do graph every now and then.
Yep.
And you'd run into dudes and it'd be chill most times. Like if you were sort of semi-respected in that, dudes would be all right with you. They'd let you do whatever. But yeah, if someone could rort you for, I don't know, maybe $20 or $100 or whatever, they'd do it. Yeah. It's just, it just becomes their necessity where,
And so then does the scene start changing post-heroin, in mid-90s when trains start to get buffed way more? It's changing the way that people are doing graph?
For us, not really. Like I just stayed bombing the whole time.
Same mentality.
Yeah, same mentality. But I'd see it with mates. They'd stop bombing. They'd more edge on to doing the crime and that sort of thing. And it was sort of that peer group pressure as well. So you'd see that a lot. So you'd have older riders and then just younger dudes hanging off them that'd be getting into the gear and that, and their lives would be fucked after that. Like just straight downhill.
Not many people come back from that stuff.
No, not at all. And I've lost a few mates to that. And so it's just it really is a one-way sort of street. There's no, I think it's something like between 1% and 5% actually get off it, or
No, and I think a lot of people that do get off it generally either replace it with some of that synthetic stuff that the government gives you, like fucking whatever, methadone or whatever, and or they just move on to other drugs.
They still use when they're on the dome and that sort of shit. But their lifestyle. It's not something you're going to progress in.
No, you don't. No, it's bad. It's bad. So when on your journey, mid-90s, where are we going from there? Are you looking at graffiti differently? Are you just you just keep the same mentality? Just
It's the same mentality.
Just go hard, go hard,
go hard. Like, so like I was saying, in 1990, I was doing a lot of run-ups, a lot of station bombing, all that sort of thing. And in 91, when I got in TFA, we were going before,
Yep.
the dudes, this is one of the decent sort of missions we went on. This dude, Gas and Rabbit, they rock up to my house. I've got a mate, Merritt, who's at my house, and they were like, you know, the yard's out this way, and I'm like, yeah, and he was like, let's go do them. And so we drove up to Belgrave. Merritt wasn't allowed to come because he was in CW, and these dudes were like, no, it's a TFA mission. Like, TFA and CW weren't really the best of, they were from two different parts of the line.
Okay, so break that down for someone like me who doesn't know. Where's TFA from? Where's CW
Right,
from?
so TFA sort of, in 89, they were, a lot of the dudes in TFA in 90 were from this crew WB, Wicked Buds. CW and STR were from, they were from Box Hill, Camwell. And CW, STR were like Belgrave, Lilydale, Ringwood, mainly. And so those dudes had a bit of beef. It's sort of, the stigma sort of stayed around, sort of thing, but it was lessening each sort of, I don't know, each year. Like, there was less dramas between the people.
Yep.
So we go up to Belgrave, we hit train, just one of the 3 trains up there, go to Upper Gully, hit 2 of the trains there, drive across through the mountain to Lilydale. I could jump fences easy, like it was nothing. I knew a lot of easy spots to get over into the yards. And so I'd smash on between 7 and 9 trains in Lilydale, drive through to Ringwood. We do the trains in the strip. I jumped in there, did them, and then we drive to Jolimont. And Jolimont's a huge yard. It was bigger the years before. They'd been chopping parts out and sending. They built Epping, which held a lot of trains, and so a few of the trains from Jolimont got sent up there. But yeah, there was 6 trains in Hursty Corner, so we do them first. I'd never done Jolly. Jolly hasn't got any fences really around it. It's just a big daunting yard, like yeah.
Right in the city as well.
You're right in the middle of the city. Like, how do you do this sort of thing? But really, you just sort of walk in there and do it. Like, it's
just back yourself.
Yeah, it's really like, and having someone show us all that how to do these yards sort of thing was sort of essential for me because so we did all of Jolly, and then that week we did Lilydale 5 times and Ringwood 3 times. This is with other people as well. But after doing Jolly, I get back home, and I left home about 11 o'clock at night. I get back home about 5 in the morning. Merritt's there, and he's like, "Did you put us up?" And I'm like, "Oh, fuck. I fucking forgot, man." And he's like, "Fuck, but all right, just take us to Jolly." So for the next 5 or 6 weeks, we go out every weekend. We just smash Jolly. And I'd wait for all the trains to be in the yard and then try and hit as many of them as I could, sort of thing. We go there one time with Brew's MSA, and he's like, "No, we go in now." Like, while there's cleaners and the guards are still getting off the train, walking around. So yeah, because he wanted to get the train back home. So we smashed that yard with him, and yeah, it was nuts that time. I changed my tag a few times over the years as well. Like, I wrote Prod Prague, and then in that time I wrote Sin. So yeah, and that was the quickest I think I'd ever gotten up on trains. It was pretty much overnight. Within a week, I was up on, I don't know, 70% of the trains, something like that.
Because of Jolimont.
Because of Jolimont, yeah. And hitting these other yards as well, and then doing run-ups and loops during the day while we're waiting for night time to hit the yards. Like, yeah.
And what was the mentality of changing from Prod to Sin? Sin, I'm the SIN?
Yeah. So I went over to this dude's house plot, and they were going to do panels. And so I just asked to go along. Flick was there. We go to Morty Gullick. We do the panels in the yard. Every time we did panels with dudes, I'd always want to hit the other trains, and a lot of the time dudes would be like, "Not till we're all out of the yard can you fucking go in and smash the rest of the trains," because just if I get seen, it just brings heat.
For sure. And you're more into the bombing, they're more into painting the panels.
Yeah. Like, I just love the bombing. Because panels weren't really running, so
You're like, what's the point?
Yeah, sort of like. But you need bomb trains for the panels to run. and you need really bomb trains for the
You're performing community service.
Yeah, sort of.
Helping
Like,
the riders out.
At the same time, I just loved it. It was it was just part of my life. Like just going out every day and just doing runs, just the thrill, like that excitement, that rush, and the adrenaline from it, everything it was just
So you'd be in the yard, the other dudes would do their panels. You're doing a panel as well, but you're just thinking, all right, as soon as everyone's on their way out, I'm going
to wreck all the other trains, as much as I can with whatever paint I got left. Yeah. One of the times we went to do Jolly, I took had about 20 or 30 cans, and they were all different colours, so more panel and paint. There was me, Cirque, and Merritt, and we were hanging in the city. We run into these two city chicks. These two city chicks roll these dudes in the city, or he's suiting this chick. And so we bailed from them. We were walking back up towards Jollymont, and DSG come straight up and pick us up and hassle us. So we think, fuck, like, we're not going to do anything tonight. So we bail, we start walking to Richmond, and on the way to Richmond, there's the grey walls just out of Jollymont towards Richmond Station.
Near the MCG sort of.
Yeah, right near there. And we run into Brace and Sick. They were doing pieces on the wall. And Miss was there as well, but he was just sort of keeping watch. And we thought the mission was over because we'd been picked up by Graff Squad just up in the city.
So that was the designated graffiti squad?
Yeah. DSG, District Support Group, whatever it was called. Yeah.
But that's primarily what they did?
Yeah. So, that Graff Squad and sort of... they just kept overwatch of the train sort of thing and the hoods hanging around, that sort of thing. Yeah. And so we run into, and I'm like, we've got 70 trains there. Why are you doing this piece here? Let's go in. So we go into Jollymont. I go get me paint. We do a crew whole car between the five of us. Miss didn't come in, and then from that we just bombed the rest of the yard, like straight out, and then left. Like I'd always prefer to be hitting trains rather than doing a wall or some shit like that. It was just, I just like bombing trains. Yeah.
And as crazy as it sounds, in that part of the city, it's never going to be overly quiet. So you're probably better off in the yard than you are on the street there and fucking on a wall.
Yeah. So it was different from now because you didn't have shopping hours were earlier, finished earlier. Yeah. So everything shut down a lot earlier in the city.
Yeah.
And if you're walking around there at night, then you're bound to get picked up. Doing the walls and that, it was probably as easy as doing Jollymont or doing the yards, but I just thought, why are you doing this? Let's go and hit the yards. And even though you should get cleaned off probably quicker off the trains than off a wall, I don't know, I just like that, yeah.
I always wondered with that whole sort of like Richmond Station where you said everyone would hang out there, would the cops roll up, would whatever the DSGs or whatever they're called, would they come and say, we know what you guys are doing?
So I hardly go there. I'd go there every now and then when I thought I was up on a heap of trains. Like when we did all those trains that one night, I went there the next day just to see what the outcome was, how many trains were running down whichever line. But occasionally you get DSG or the Grass Squad or whoever taking photos of the dudes who are hanging at Richmond 9 and 10, and you'd have someone who'd be pointing out, this is so-and-so, this is so-and-so. There's always some scallywag hanging out there who's just letting everyone, or letting the transits know who you are, sort of thing.
Right. So someone would be like informing on people that were there.
Yeah. So
really?
Whether they get picked up later on and they're shown photos or whatever, yeah. So I just didn't like hanging out in that group. Even though a lot of the dudes hanging out there in the 90s weren't really bombing heaps or riding heaps.
They just like the culture.
Yeah. They still hung around. They were still keeping watch. Like you'd always run into older riders who know that those seats that was where everyone hung. Yeah.
So then after this sort of moving into the late 90s, what happens then?
There's just less and less people hanging out. There's less people bombing. There's new riders coming up, bombing like Pace. It's sort of dying off in a way on the trains.
Yeah.
Though, I mean, people could still do loops and that sort of thing. So in 1993, I'll go back to 90. I'm doing a hangout between Chatham Station and Surrey Hill Station, and I'm doing like a rainbow hangout, which is circular above the window, but then I decided to go under the windows. And my mate Swipe, he kept watch for us for heaps of stuff, he just screamed like a gut gut wrench and scream at us. And I lift my head up and go past my head at the train weights, which hold up the train lines. And like they missed my head by inches, sort of thing, like about 10, 20 centimetres. Like it was just that close. If I was still hanging out at I would have.
You lost your head, man.
Yeah, yeah. And so in 1993, a couple of my mates, they're doing loops. This dude Soft and this dude, one of my good mates, Hobbit. And Hobbit's, we'd been hassling him a heap to bomb. Like, he always kept watch when we'd do a yard and that, and occasionally he'd come in a yard with us. But yeah, like if I was doing Lewerdale, I'd have him keep watch while I jump the fence and go in and just smash the trains. And occasionally, even in Lewerdale, like he'd whistle or something and just get under the carriage and just watch, and there'd be a group of bogans or something walking past, and you're taking a chance with that. But so '93, he's doing a hangout off of Comang, I think, and he'd really hang out at the train like a long way and do his tag. And yeah, he got cleaned up. One of the concrete weights smacked him in the head. My mate Softs tried to pull him in the train, but he was dead weight. He was a big fella, and yeah, he's just gone under the train from there. He's pretty much dead, sort of when his head hit the concrete weights. Yeah.
When stuff like that happens, is that a bit of a fucking wake up call? Like, man, this is dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I always knew it was sort of dangerous. Like I'd slipped out of doorways and that sort of thing when doing hangouts and that, and just managed to recover, not go under. In the middle of all the carriages, there were a couple of steps under the door. So a couple of times you'd land on the steps, you'd be all right. You'd be able to get back in. But when he died, yeah, it was. I don't know. For me and my mates, we just went out and smashed it, like extra double sort of thing, because we lost a mate, and so we just put him up, yeah, as much as we could. And yeah, for about 3 months, I bombed with his tag, just to
Out of respect.
Out of respect for him, yeah.
But does it change your mentality? Like, okay, this whole thing, maybe we don't need to do hangouts, maybe we don't need to do that. Well, you think we just got to be safer when we do it.
Yeah, it's just be alert, more be alert sort of thing. I warned everyone at Box Hill at that stage, don't do hangouts between these stations. Like even the young guys who were coming up and all my mates. So I was sort of surprised when I found out it was him who died that day. But yeah, it was sort of, well, you're young, you sort of, you know what can happen. But for me, it was, I probably went out and did more hangouts than what I'd ever done, sort of thing. Like it was just reckless, careless, didn't give a fuck. Like my mates just died, so yeah, I'm going to smash them out. Like,
as an older guy now, though, more mature, can you see how crazy that is now to think about it?
Yeah, but when you're a kid and when you're young, you just sort of
feel invincible.
Yes, to a point, yeah. Like you don't think it's going to happen to you and your mates. And even on that day when he died, me and Merritt were hanging out. And we go to Belgrave. I run into dude New 2 from DMA, and he's like, "Do you reckon trains will get bombed again?" I'm like, "No, like there's fuck all on trains. Like there's less riders. There are some good bombers out there still bombing, but." And then when I found out it was him, trains got bombed again. So, but yeah, it's I don't really, but you roll dice in that sense, like. Stuff could happen, but no, fuck it. Well, let's just keep bombing.
Yeah. And I guess you're so passionate about it. You think, well, fuck, if I'm going to go, this is what I want to go by because this is how I'm so passionate into this craft. If I die by the train, I fucking die by the train. Is that kind of mentality?
Yeah, sort of. But you don't. Like you said before, you think you're invincible to a point, and you don't.
Once your friend dies, you know you're not invincible. You know.
Yeah, but. Yeah, you could go one way or the other with that. And after that, mates who were close to him, we did sort of slow down. But because he died doing a hangout, his mum had asked the Met to do something about it. So that's why they put the beavers on the doors. And once the beavers were on the doors, it was a lot harder to do hangouts. As soon as you force the doors open, beavers go off, drivers alerted to what you're doing. And probably a lot of the time drivers seeing you doing hangouts anyway. Like they've got the mirrors on top of the train that they can look through and just see if the train's on a curve or whatever. See you hanging out, and it's.
What about train surfing? I know it's not graffiti, but I'm sure that was happening a bit as well.
Yeah, so I seen there was a lot of that happening. And one dude, I remember he down Lilydale line, he got electrocuted. He got up on top of the train, he come back in the train, he'd been electrocuted in the top of the shoulder. It had gone out down by his heel. And then, but he was back up on the trains a couple of weeks later. Same thing happened.
Did he lose his arm?
No. He just had, I think he just had a burn mark from in his shoulder and down on his heel as well.
Because it grounded right through him.
Yeah. And the second time it happened to him, it went through his shoulder and out through his elbow. Like, yeah. So dudes are up there. I wasn't into train surfing that. We'd do ledges, which is where you climb out Hitachi window and just climb on the ledge, hop in another window up further. But yeah, getting on top of the train, no, it wasn't for me. No.
Hang on, explain to me a ledgie again. I haven't heard about the ledgies.
All right, so on Hitachi, you pull the windows down and there's a sort of a gutter sort of thing on top of the Hitachi, and you could hold on to that and then just climb along holding that and then hop
like
in
a
it.
monkey grip sort of
Yeah. And then just me and this dude Summon, we were doing it back on from Moorbark to Croydon on a Hitachi, and at Croydon I'm like, oh, let's keep going. So we keep going, but the guard seen us when we went past, and so we had to climb around from the back of the train, back of the Hitachi, climb around to the side of the train, then climb and then ledgy along. Like we're standing on the little ladder grip that's on the on like just tiny little things like the door handle and that until we get to the ledgy. As soon as we're on the ledgy, we just got to find a window which we can pull down. There was a rider inside the train, but he wouldn't even get up to open the windows for us. He was
too shit scared about what was going on.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure why he didn't open the window. Like whether it was us. We're pretty sure that dude was from the west side of the city as well. So he might have been thinking, I don't know what he was thinking. Yeah.
But there's just normal train punters are on this, and they're seeing you guys go scale the whole fucking train.
From the back of the train to getting into the windows on the side, that was a mission. Like, yeah, that was one little slip up and fuck, we'd be under the train. There'd be, yeah. So we're peaking as we're going around from the back to, and you couldn't do it on a Coming because, yeah, you couldn't, but you get on a Hitachi, you could. Yeah, that was pretty hectic.
And when did the Hitachis ran to what, the late 90s?
I think most of them ran, I think 2008 or something.
Oh, so they ran
maybe a bit later. Maybe, yeah. They took some out of service, but yeah, I'm not too sure when they finished up with them.
Yeah. And then because the next generation of trains had a lot more cameras, like a lot harder for you to do what you want to do.
Yeah. So by the time those trains came in, I'd sort of stopped bombing. Yeah, they were for the new guys who were coming up to do whatever on. Yeah. But Tashis and that were pretty good. They were good.
It seems like everybody kind of has this mentality that was the golden era of Melbourne train painting, train bombing, train everything.
Yeah, it sort of was. Like, I mean, after I stopped bombing, trains still got bombed, but they put a lot more cameras up on the stations. Trains were a lot cleaner, so they could actually figure out where this train was going and getting bombed when it's coming back. I mean, one of the times I got raided, they showed us paper slips which had, from the L main line, which had me and a couple of other guys, our tags, where they thought they were done and how much damage they thought were done. So they could really sort of pinpoint where you were coming from and even, yeah.
So that is a real game changer because there's no anonymity. I'm going out just doing this. You're like, they're actually cataloguing stuff and they've got points where they know this has been on here. You've done this much damage. That's a fucking game changer.
So they were doing that for a while. They'd sort of figure out where dudes were bombing and where they'll come from. And they like in East Malvern in '90, they had a transit police headquarters, and those dudes patrolled the Glen Waverley line like nothing to stop them dudes from bombing. But occasionally they'd come down Lilydale line and spend 4 or 5 weeks down there, or 2-3 weeks or whatever, and just make it red hot. So if you were bombing from the end of the line, a lot of riders, if they were from there, they'd sort of stay in that area. They wouldn't really travel out to, like, because I went to school in towards the city. So it was more open for me. I knew where good spots were up and down the line. I knew once I'd see them transits on that line, I'd go, "No, I'm not bombing there. I'm going somewhere else."
And they'd be full uniform and everything.
Yeah,
Like, they
yeah.
wanted their presence known.
Blue uniform, but there were a lot of undercovers as well. And yeah, some of them you wouldn't pick, but you'd have other riders who'd tell you, "Oh, that's a transit," and you go, "All right, that's Graph Squad." So yeah, cool. Just try and dodge them. One time in Lewdale, it was me, B, Worthy, Alias, and Durr, and we're bombing this combing, and 3 transits hop off it, and they walk past us, walk up towards the guards thing, and the guards are in the back carriage at this stage. And B jumps out and does a bumblebee, draws the bumblebee on the train, and the guard was hanging out the back on his radio to the transits who'd walked past us, or to the guards, and they were told the transits. And I jumped down, do a PD throw up, and then the guard's hanging out watching me. And at the same time, I've got dudes inside the train who are bombing, going, those 3 transits are coming back, like, run. So I jumped back in the train to sort of trick the guard into going the other side, because you think maybe...
Cat and mouse game.
Yeah, it is. And then as soon as he goes back into the carriage to the other side, I just jump out, start running across the paddocks. And I've got these 3 transits chasing me. When you run from Lewdale, you have to run through all the factories and that, or... I mean, there's a few places to run, but it's pretty open. So I'm running through these factories, and I've got these 3 dudes chasing me, and I'm like, "Oh, hurry up." I thought it was the dudes I was with, and then I realised it's not them, it's fucking transits.
You're telling them to hurry up. Yeah. So you're essentially taunting them. They're like,
yeah, without knowing it, sort of thing, like, fuck. And then, oh, fuck, you'd have to run somewhere like Chirnside Park and get a bus from there. Like, you couldn't go back to Lewdale, just being seen there bombing. But the amount of shit we got away with down there, it was pretty phenomenal.
So when you say there's undercovers, literally there's people in plain clothes sitting on the train waiting for riders to just do insides or do something that's fucking red hot, and then they just go bang, pull out a badge.
Yeah, pretty much. Or they'd walk, see, at times they'd wear Doc Martens and that sort of thing. And so when they'd hop on, they'd look at me, they'd look at your shoes, see if you got Air Max on or Nikes or whatever, see what dress you got on, and dress up, and then just sort of, they'd bail on to the other dudes in the carriage. And yeah, if you knew they were transits, you just piff all your paint and that out the window and just, hope for the best. But
so the Doc Martens was a giveaway because it looks like cop shoes.
No, it was more subtle. So yeah, they just sort of leave you alone until they pick you up later, and you've got ink stains all over your shirt, your country road shirt, and all over your shoes and that sort of thing as well. Yeah. When you're doing a hangout with the market, especially a flow pen, the pilots, the ink could, when you pump it, the ink could overspray. So like as you're doing a hangout, the overspray just fucking go all over you, sort of thing. Like if they saw you with ink on you, if they picked you up with paint or whatever, you sort of,
red-handed. You call it literally.
Well, sort of, but it just depended on what you say at the time to alleviate. Like you might just picked up the marker off a mate at school or something, or whatever. You haven't actually tagged train or anything, so it's just what you say to them when you get picked up, whether they let you go or whether they keep you. And
that's the whole thing, isn't it? I guess some people are no good with like not saying anything, and some people just say too much and fucking caught on.
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't know. Like.
Yeah. So, oh jeez, yeah. In '92, PBP crew got raided. 37 people got raided over 3 days. Like they were just going from one dude's house to the next dude's house to the next dude's house. And when they came to mine, they'd just been to Merritt's and raided him. He was like yelling out to his mum, call pride. Like, tell him, because I was next. They told him I was next. And when they raided me, they told me that they were going after Sink, after me.
Was that strategic to tell people? Did they want you to fucking give them a heads up? It seems odd.
Oh, we didn't have the chance, because they're raiding him or whoever straight after they raided me. So
like as in like 20 minutes later?
Yeah, or an hour later or something. As soon as they finished cleaning up whatever's in my house, they'd go there and pick them up. And yeah, so that was massive. But the cops as well came in and told us 2 people, which had dobbed us in, like dobbed everyone in. They'd come in and say their tags, and you'd be like, don't know. They'd say their other tags, you'd be like, don't know them. Then they say their names, you'd be like, oh, I don't know them, sort of thing. Like, where's the statement? Show me the statement. Like, and there'd be no statement. It'd just be, they just tell them, oh, this dude's this dude's that. And they'd have to have a whole heap of other evidence as well. And like I said before, dudes who stayed at the end of the line, they'd get sort of noticed a lot easier than people who were travelling up and down the line just bombing different parts. So you're hitting, like at Glenferrie, you'd be doing run-ups. There'd be 20 run-ups in 2 hours you could do. And they're coming from Alamein, Belgrave, Lilydale, so they can't really specifically say that's from this line because there's other trains coming in which confuse them a bit as to where it's getting bombed and who's doing it. In '94, I think, when they've started bringing in more cameras on the stations and brought out the beepers on the doors, as well as putting those huge mirrors on the side of the train. Besides the little mirror that they had this huge one, so the driver can see the whole train, unless he's got the TV screens in front of him, which he'd watch at the stations. So they'd watch the cameras and watch these dudes hopping on and off, and the trains, those carriages are getting trashed. So they sort of know this, and that's how pace got done, I think, for P135, and that was, they just picked him up on the Alamein line, just doing repetitive loops. But they'd sort of know, they'd know who you are for a while before they do anything really about it.
They're building a case.
Building a case, yeah.
So when they raided all of you guys, and you included, were you mindful enough to not have too much paraphernalia?
Well, they only had one bit of paper from my house which had a prod tag on it. And as soon as they saw that, they're like, go get the mechanic, which was PJ's nickname. And from that I went, oh, that's PJ, yeah. And they're like, that's when they turn around and they go, oh, so do you know McGill Gorilla and this? And I'd be looking at the copper straight opposite me, who's going bright red and sort of giggling. And I go, I could have a fair guess at who this is. But yeah, unless you're really admitted to it, like, there's nothing they can really sort of do. Like, they'll try and charge you for other shit, like maybe stolen goods or it's
not illegal to own spray paint.
No, but having it sort of indicates to them, and so you talk your way out of it. You say it's for illegal or this and that, but it just depended on what the person said when they're getting raided
And I guess it's a bit of a fucking numbers game. If they're raiding 30-something people, then someone eventually, inevitably, is going to say the wrong thing, and then it's all going to fucking...
Well, a couple of dudes got made examples of out of that raid. One dude got 6 months for doing graph, and that was pretty harsh sort of thing what they did to that dude.
Is that in like a proper prison, or is that in like a little fucking farmy thing?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
But it's still jail time for graph's
yeah. I mean, riders in my area, they were getting locked up in Pentridge. So,
that was maximum security.
Yeah. That's a heavy jail to get locked up in. Yeah, for that time. Dudes be getting either the day programs where they go in and live a day as a prisoner, or they'd just be getting a couple of months. So some riders, as soon as they did a jail stint, like if they got picked up racking an apple, a beer, or a packet of chewy, it's 3 months straight away for them.
Bang, just violating parole or whatever.
Oh, well, just continuing. Like, they've already got a record. They've been locked up, so yeah, they're going to get locked up again. It's just how it goes because they're still doing crime.
Yeah. So what is the what inevitably happens after that raid and with that crew? Do people just go, right, we're too under the pump now, take it easy?
A few dudes did, but other dudes just change their tags and keep going. Like every time we get busted, it wasn't like it's the end. Like, we just change what we did, whether we change our tags or change where we bombed and that sort of thing.
I guess some guys would drop off though. They go, I want to go get a real job.
Like, I don't want to get in trouble no more. Yeah, it's getting too much for them, sort of thing. It's just what they do.
And so if that didn't really stop you though, you kept going, right, well, I'm going to keep going.
No, I changed my tag again. Yeah. So I got there was a dude who wrote Nappy Rash and borrowed his tag, which was an old tag of his, which was Bio. Wrote Bio, Bionic and that, and so it's 92, and just smash it with that tag, and still writing prod every between 5 and 10 trains. I do one prod throw up on a train or whatever, let that go through. Just smashing it with a different tag. It's a new start sort of thing, and a lot of dudes did that. They just rotated their tags. So,
but the people in the know, the other riders in the know, knew that that is actually like bio is actually prod, and
Well, not really. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Some did and some didn't. And it just depended, like word of mouth. So people would tell each other, "Oh, this is yeah," and then it'd be obvious, like, "Oh, that's got to be him because he's it's the same crew putting up and all that sort of thing." But
It's hard for some people to understand because they think, oh man, it's all about getting your name up so much. I guess it speaks about how much volume of work you had out there that you could have multiple tags and still be up a lot.
like, but it's still the passion that goes with it. Like, so from '90 when I'm just smashing it with Prague and then Prod, to '91 when I changed it to Sin. When I wrote Sin, Lemon was like, that's the quickest he'd ever seen anyone get up in his time on trains. So it was about a week it took me to get up on a heap of trains.
And it's 3 letters. Like, is it, as far as like getting in and out when you're doing that tag, that's pretty quick.
Yeah, so you do a run up and you might get, I could do like 5 or 6 letters pretty easy in that 20 seconds. And doing a simple tag like bio or Sin, which doesn't have pretty circular sort of tags, so you could just smash it. And if you're doing a yard, like, you do as many as you can, or it depends how much paint you got. Like me and Merritt one day we were doing Jolimont, and we must have only taken about 4 or 5 cans in because we ran out of paint and got a couple of hours to spare. So we walked through the maintenance sheds in the yard and just turning on all the taps in the vats of the buffing sheds and that, just letting everything drain, pouring out all the chemicals they had there, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're just like, all right, how can we be as destructive as we can even though we don't have any cans?
Yeah, and without smashing up the trains, oh geez. So there was this one train, it was a 334 Louisdale or something like that, that I'd go down to Louisdale, run into Sock, Nestle, first, besides Simon and Sirius, these dudes were my ex-bombing partners, and I had Swipe as well, who bombed a heap in '90, but he'd keep watch for me after that sort of thing. And, geez, we've run off the track a bit from what I was saying. Shit.
It's all right. If the story comes back, let us know.
Yeah.
So you've got this mentality then that you're never going to stop. That's what you do. But inevitably, you do take a breather and you sort of you hang it up for a bit. What sort of brings that on?
So in '93, I broke my leg jumping a fence. And that put me out for about 6 weeks or so, 5, 6 weeks of bombing. After that, like when you take time off, like anything, you get a bit rusty. You sort of have to sort of get yourself back right into it. When you're out there just smashing it, it's day to day. You know what you're doing. You know where the loops are. You know, you're pretty confident in that. But when you sort of stop for a while, your confidence sort of drops. You've got to
It's like an injury in sport.
Yeah. You've got to rebuild yourself up and do that. So that was my first sort of since taking that January off in '91, that was the first sort of time I'd taken that much time off. And then getting back into bombing after that, a lot of little things had happened. Like, so I'd be doing a lot of Box Hill loops, and I couldn't. So one day I go back to Box Hill, and everyone's like, "Get out of here! Get out of here! This cop Milburn's after you." And he was the sergeant at Box Hill, and he's running around everywhere asking for me, asking by my name and that. And
By your real name?
By my real name. And I knew it was to do with Box Hill, doing Box Hills, because there was a guard who worked at Box Hill who knew everyone. He was a bit of a dealer, so I don't know why he'd do this, but he'd also rat you in. Like, and I just figured, oh, it's this dude's dobbing. I can't go to Box Hill no more. Going to Louisdale, I had problems with a security guard down in Louisdale because him and another guy had chased me off doing loops down there. They'd seen me bombing a train. So if I went down to Louisdale and I saw him, I had to get out of there because he'd just grab us straight away and just cause us trouble, whether he try and gets charged or whatever.
Yep.
And then the Ringwood guards knew didn't know who I was, but they knew me by face. And a lot of the train drivers and the train guards would get to know you. They'd see you around.
You're on the train a lot.
Yeah. And if you're doing something like a shuttle train service like the Alamains, it's the same drivers, the same guards.
So what makes it a shuttle service?
Sorry. So Alamain's like it's a real quiet line. It's not a main line like Belgrave and Louisdale. It's just a very quiet line. There's a few passengers, but it's a really quiet line. That's
a bit sparse.
Yeah. So if you're on and off that same, hopping on at Hartwell, hopping off at Ashburn, hopping off at Wilson, they get to know who you are. And some of the guards, like at Croydon when we're hanging out, we've been chased off the platform by the guards in this one, the station guards, and this one train guard who was just a pure vigilante, hated graff. Like, I'd done a dusty on a window at Ringwood, he'd come up to me with a chain. At Croydon, look, this
dusty.
Yeah. This dude was full on. Like, and I'll go back to when I'm bombing with Flick and Rabbit. We're doing heaps of middle-ons in the middle of the train. We'd run up at Hartwell, jump on between the two cars, three cars, and then just smash it, and then just jump off at the next station, Wilson, from Hartwell, yeah. And we're on a combing, me, Flick, and Rabbit, and we're smashing it, and next thing I know, there's a guard in the fourth carriage knocking on my window, just saying, "Get back in the carriage, get back in the carriage." And Rabbit just jumps off. The train's coming, slowing down, so it's pulling in, but it's still going super fast. And I don't know how Rabbit just jumped off the train and outran the train. Like, it was something pretty sort of risky
Hit
to
the ground
do.
running.
He just managed to outrun us. He's running past us as we're still on, and I go to Flick. I'll take the guard to the platform. I'll pretend to jump off, so hopefully he jumps off thinking that I'm there. I'm getting off there. You jump, and then I'll come back and jump off. But I'd run him across the platform. He didn't jump off though. Like, I pretended to jump, he didn't jump. Then I ran back and jumped, and at the same time I jumped, his Flick had just jumped a second before us. So I hit Flick mid-air. The Gumby jumps out the train, hits us both mid-air and grabs us both. I get up, I jump on the platform. Rabbit's at the second front car, throwing rocks at the guard, even though Flick's there. Rocks just smacking off the train, smacking behind him and that. And a rock goes and hits the guard in the middle of the forehead, just smacks him, knocks him half out. And at that point, he lets go of Flick. We're like, run, get up here. And Flick takes 2 steps, falls over and goes, "Nah, run, boys, get out of here." And then from that, that's where he got the bottom of his foot run over by the train. And yeah, he was knocked out from that. But yeah, a lot of people got a lot of injuries.
For sure. And then so that they inevitably get Flick then because he can't run, can he?
Yeah, but the guard belled him in the train and that. So yeah, Flick spent, I don't know, a month or so in hospital, or a bit more, with his foot. His foot was fucked up, like, yeah. But yeah, so he sort of slowed down then. I don't think they charged him with anything because the guard had beat him up in the train as well.
Which is like, yeah,
and
makes sense.
This is his vigilante guard, the one who pulled the chain on us and the one who pulled the baseball bat at Croydon on us. Like, yeah, so you'd have guards. Some guards didn't care, but some did. And train drivers, you're a bit the same, but they sort of, if someone falls off their train, jumps in front of their train, they get a lot of, psychological sort of shit happen to them. So,
and that is something that I guess during this whole process you don't really think about. You like the train drivers, that would be traumatic and stressful for them as well when someone's climbing around the fucking train. Like, it's different with the Gumbies. They've chosen that life path to try and do that. Yeah. But if you're just a train driver, that's a lot for them to take on.
Yeah. So that'll wreck their career. Like probably won't drive trains after that sort of shit. So.
And they PTSD, man. Like, not just their career, but they potentially have psychological ramifications. And some of those dudes probably can't even go near a train again. Yeah.
So that's sort of what happened with my mate Soft after Hobbit fell out, because he smacked his head on the weights. It's crushed his head. And then that dude, ended up using gear a fair bit. And I think that's what sort of part of what, I mean, he's dead now, but I think that's part of what led to his sort of demise at the end. Like, just when he have heavy stress in his life, he'd just turn back to using heroin. And
and I'm learning this a lot doing these podcasts, that a lot of drug use comes from just trauma and people that don't know how to deal with the trauma. And I think that just becomes so evident. Everyone I speak to who has friends or that they've had this like heavy drug use themselves, it comes from trauma.
Yeah.
And not dealing with it, which is something now we're only just starting to talk about.
Yeah, so people would either get into it and have fun with it, and then it'd just end up being a life fucking crushing experience, or there'd be some heavy trauma which they'd have to fall back on something and just to make them at ease and forget and just get on with life. For sure. And it doesn't matter if it's graph or it doesn't matter what it is. Like, yeah.
do you see graffiti as an addiction?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's sort of at the start, it's wanting to be something, wanting to belong to something, like this scene that's happening. It seems fucking pretty cool, so yeah, get into it. And then as you're doing it, yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, my last tag I changed, Sink, Sink a heavy bomber as well. We wrote egg, and it was just I just love bombing trains, so I'd just be doing these stupid. They were a cracked eggshell with a heap of sort of fried eggs, sort of in the look of it, and then a cracked eggshell at the end, and that's just for bombing. I just love tagging trains. There was something about it, like it's just. Yeah, like some dudes fall in love with doing panels. They see their panel running maybe once, and they're like, "Fuck!" And it is awesome when you see a panel running, or you have a panel running. But it's similar when you just got heaps of trains running. Like when you got a majority of the trains running for several years in a row, you just this is life. This is fucking awesome. And then you either take that with you and put it into something else when you leave graph, or I don't know what you do.
Well, that's definitely it. I think that with that, like from a business fucking entrepreneurial standpoint, if you do graffiti for a long period of time, you don't expect much back from it. You just do it. If you take that mentality into something business-wise, not expecting much, you'll have that graffiti mentality. You're going to be successful.
Yeah. So I think it's just life lessons with that. Like the more you practice, the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. And it doesn't matter what it is. I took up martial arts after I sort of stopped doing graph. And the lessons I took from graph, I mean, you could start, it could be basketball, it could be cricket or footy or whatever. And if the more you practice you put into it, the more passionate you are about it, the more life lessons you're going to get from that experience. And if you can take that to whatever you do next, then yeah, you should do it right.
You should do it right.
Yeah.
So Flick, let's get back onto the linear passage. Flick, he slows down because his foot's fucked.
Yeah.
You've got a couple of other mates that kind of drop off. Are you starting to think maybe I'm not going to do this forever at that stage?
It's not really sort of thing. It just keep bombing, like, because I had so many different bombing partners during the times that. Like in Sock in 90, Summoned and Serious in 90, Swiper, he stayed the whole way along. In 91, I had Sinker, Merritt, and it's just if those two drop off, or Sink stayed around till I pretty much stopped. He stopped, but Hobbit was our real good mate, so, and that affected us both in different ways. But yeah, so it was not until trains got really hard to bomb, not really hard to bomb, but really hard to get up. Like from the standard of 90 of getting up to 94, 93, 94, it was completely different. There were a lot less riders bombing. A lot of riders from my era and that had either stopped or they'd gone on to practicing their pieces and getting right into piecing and that. And so a lot of dudes, they just go one way or the other. And
I guess mid-90s graffiti, like as in street art or legal walls are popping up. People are focusing on that more than the bombing a lot of the time.
So there was this place called the VAYC, Victorian Arts Youth Commission, what I think it's called.
Morris, what was his name?
Shit.
Yeah.
And we'd see this dude. He'd be he'd have his GSU hat on. He was a real god dude, and he'd be catching the trains down to the end of the lines, and he'd either chat to riders or with us. He was a fair bit hesitant, and because you got 10 kids or whatever hanging out on a train, like some old dude, we were pretty sus on him as well. Like, is he a rat? Is he legit? Like, who is this dude? But that VOYC, they started trying to pull riders out from bombing trains and that. And if you had illegal, you could go in there and they give you paint. So you didn't have to rack paint. You didn't have to do this anymore. And so a lot of dudes would go through them and then get legals or have legals and then just use their paint, and it'd take them off the lines. I hated the joint because it did take riders that we sort of needed bombing to doing legals and not bombing no more.
And that's, for you as a graffiti purist, that's not part of it. That's
not part of my scene. No. That's other people's scene, and good on them. But yeah. Like I love the bombing aspects. Like it had been since since '86 when I started catching trains, you'd just see bomb trains. You'd see a lot of dudes up on trains, and then suddenly, by the time I start getting up, I get late. I rock up late to the party, but yeah, and I just watch it sort of demise over the years, over '92, '93, '94. It just declined. And there'd be spikes after when I left of dudes bombing and that. But like in '94, I went out bombing. When I got in DMA, I went out to go bombing, and I just couldn't get the same run-ups. I couldn't get the same numbers of trains running. So it was really hard to sort of keep that momentum going.
But you've got a fucking high standard that you've set for yourself, and inevitably when fucking technology comes in and there's more cameras and everything, you're like, no, this is the level of bombing I want to do.
Yeah.
It's pretty much impossible.
Yeah, it gets a lot harder. And when they dismantle Jolimont and that, there's an easy hit for 50 or whatever many trains you want to bomb in one night, and you can't do that no more. And even though in 1990, I didn't even. Jolimont wasn't even in consideration. I didn't need to do it because I had so many run-ups I could do up and down the line. And you could do so much raw shit because there wasn't many cameras up. The cameras that were up had 72-hour videotapes, which were kept in the station. They weren't hooked up CCTV to local cop shops and that sort of thing. It was just totally different and a lot harder sort of in that aspect. And even dudes before us had stopped because it got harder for them, for their standards. And then,
Well, yeah, every different generation has different things that they go, oh, it's not the same now because this. It's not the same now because of this. But the younger guys coming up, they don't think like that because they're like, well, this is how it is now.
Yeah. So even these days, like the OGC dudes, I mean, they're wicked because they just go, and I believe they'd have the same sort of standards that I would have had if they were back in my day. And there's probably a lot of riders out there who would have those standards if they bombed from, but they're not there. They've got what they've got now. And even when I speak to them, these are young dudes, and they're like, "Fuck, we wish we had it like you." And it's like, yeah, I wish I had it like the dudes from 5 years before me. Like
grass is always greener.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's sort of evolution, and at the same time, it's also, well, this is what they've got. They're going to make the most of it. Like I try to make the most of my part of the scene when I was younger. Like, yeah.
So then, when do you start to sort of take it easy a bit? Like sort of 2000?
No. So I stopped in around '94 is when I don't really count anything before '90, and I don't count anything really after '94 for me.
When you say you don't count it, why is that? You just don't think you went hard enough?
No, yeah, I wasn't bombing to what I was in 90, 91, 92, 93, like, yeah.
But your standard of bombing might be different to other people. So other people might think, oh, that guy's fucking up heaps, right? But you're like, no, that was my period.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of dudes that run into, like, oh, I was up during this time, and I'd be thinking, were you? Like, I don't think you were, like, because...
You were paying attention.
Yeah. I mean, when you... Like in 86, 89, I'm not on every train. I'm not out late on every train. I'm not wagging school heaps to catch these trains. But in 90, 91, that I am. So I'm seeing a lot more. I'm understanding that these are... so I thought I was up a fair bit, mid-90, but it wasn't until a bit later on in 90 when a lot more riders are sort of going, oh, you're up heaps. They're sort of accepting and that's when I realised, oh, fuck. Like, so I thought I was up back then, but... That's just to me, and this is like to other riders, so to speak, who come after me who tell me, yeah, I was up during this time, and it's back to that standard sort of thing. Like.
It is, and at the end of the day, this sort of pursuit, it's only about one person, that's yourself. Like, it doesn't even matter what other people think. You're only doing it for yourself.
Yeah. So at the start, it goes through waves. Like at the start, I'm doing it to get noticed. I'm doing it to get up and that and to get that little bit of fame. But as it goes, I'm just doing it because I love doing it. And, with other dudes coming along, I can't speak for, in that same sense of exactly what you said. Yeah.
It's a personal pursuit. You do it for yourself, and then if other people start to pay attention, well, fuck, good on them. But I feel like riders only really do it for their own passion and your own thrill, and that's what you want to do.
Yeah. So a lot of it is the thrill. It's for sure the thrill of seeing yourself up and just the buzz you get from doing it as well. And then that's where, like I say, I thought I was up heaps, but obviously I wasn't up enough or for long enough to be noticed. Like, and riders before me would be up for years. And even some of those older riders come back and every now and then drop in and just smash a few trains or smash a heap of trains, or be showing younger dudes that are hanging around their area, like, this is how you bomb, this is how you get up. Yeah.
So when you do start to take it easy, how do you feel that void of it's a thrill, you're sort of addicted to it? Do you turn that passion into something else? You mentioned martial arts.
Yeah, martial arts. So before I went into martial arts, the trains weren't getting that bombed. And when people get cars as well, it takes them off the train line. So you're not on the train line heaps. You're not running into people who can tell you this transit's here, this transit's there, whatever. So you don't have that sort of background information on what's going on down their lines. And if you're driving around, you want to do yards and that sort of thing, that's cool. You can get away with that heaps. But it sort of takes you away from that whole scene to a point. And when we were driving around, there'd be me, Sync, sometimes this dude Album come along, and we just start like driving around, just bombing every traffic light, jumping out, doing the poles, doing whatever. Like,
car opens up different,
different aspects. Yeah. It really does. And when you're just catching trains, that's day to day. You run into all these dudes. That's part of that scene. But then when you're in a car, it changes. It does change heaps.
I speak to so many riders on this show and they all say, when I first got a car, I said, I'm going to catch the train. I'm still going to catch the train. But inevitably convenience wins out and you just start driving around.
You get lazy. You just get hell lazy. And even though, I mean, when I'm driving, I'm still going up to my station, which was Melbourne, and I'm trying to do run-ups there. But with the way the trains were, the cameras on the train, on the stations and that, and then those big mirrors, which the driver can actually see up the whole train, it just sort of kills that thrill, because you can only do like 2 or 3 run-ups before you're going to get chased off the station, or the cops are going to be there, or whatever.
And they're building a file of your footage and stuff, and they're building a case, so it makes it hard.
Yeah, you don't really think about that sort of thing too much until you get raided, and then you sort of go, "Fuck, how did this happen?" And then other mates are like saying, "Oh yeah, they showed us this picture of you at Belgrave. They're hassling for who you are and that." And I'm like, "All right, cool, yeah, we'll drop off then." Like,
yeah. So you start focusing on martial arts and that sort of thing, but you still. You always be thinking about writing. You always be thinking about it.
So still did some pieces and that. Still bombing every now and then, going out and just either taking a can out, walking around bombing, or doing some run-ups. But like exactly what you said before, I had the stand which I'd set for myself in '90, and not being able to maintain that, it just sort of killed that thrill of it, sort of thing, to a point. Like, you go out bombing, but your trains will get buffed so quick that it was not pointless, but it seemed a bit waste of time, sort of thing.
So you thought that your sort of period was kind of coming to an end. You're always going to be a part of it. You're always going to be friends with dudes in that scene, but you just didn't want to. You thought that it wasn't what it used to be, and it was time for you to kind of
move on. Yeah, move on to a point. But still every now and then coming out and doing stuff. But my heart was different about it. So I just didn't have that passion to go out and do heaps of dudes are doing just heaps of pieces and that. Like in '94 when they brought out fat caps and they started bringing out riders paint and all that sort of thing. The scene changed. The scene definitely changed up.
Did you like that when there was purpose-made graffiti shops like Obese and stuff then, or did you think it lost its essence?
It lost a bit of its essence to me, really. Like, I hate buying paint. I fucking hate it. Like,
You're a purist when it comes to the art.
It's just paint was so easy to rack. You racked your paint and you did whatever with it. But then when you're buying paint, it's just, I don't know. It's weird. Like, we go and get video cameras and shit, but we'd still rack our paint. So.
Well, and I guess to go from basically free materials to then going into a purpose-made graffiti store and paying $12 for a Belton can or something, it just didn't. You couldn't go, what? Like,
he sold me all his paint when he wanted to stop, and I bought it off him, but I was like, I don't really want to fucking use it. Like, I paid
dirty.
money fucking for you and for dealing with, for getting this shit. Like, so I ended up selling it back to him. I only used a few cans, and
That's hilarious, man, that you actually are such a traditionalist when it comes to that if you purchase the paint, it just feels like it's not legit enough, and that says a lot about how into the fucking traditional methods.
Because if you went and bought paint in the years when I was bombing and that, you were sort of classed as a toy. Like, what the fuck are you buying your paint for when you can just go and rack it? It's so fucking easy. Like, why would you do this? And then, but at the same time, these graph shops coming out, they're chaining up their paint. They're taking paint out of Coles. They're taking paint out of Kmart. I don't think Target's got. I don't think Target.
And cameras are just more prevalent everywhere.
Yeah, and more cameras are popping up everywhere. But at the start, you don't really worry about the cameras because there's always blind spots. But as it goes on, they're putting up more cameras and more cameras. And another thing was in '91 when they started painting all stations as well. If you went up and bombed them stations, they'd have video of you, and as well as that, they'd know that tag was done at this time on whenever, and it just became. So you have to skip things like bombing station. That you still have to find blind spots in that to do bomb from or whatever.
So then, even though you sort of stepped out of the game a little bit, you're always paying attention. You're always keeping your finger on the pulse of what's going on and of tags happening around town. Are you still watching? It's something you can't really just shut off, can you?
Yeah. So you're hearing about younger dudes who are going out and bombing, and you're like, for the young dudes going bombing, I was always like, fucking do it, go do it, and still am with these OGC dudes who they put us up on every couple of panels and that sort of shit, and then it's like get a photo from Sydney the other day. They put us up in Sydney. I'm just fucking mad. Keep it up, because dudes like that have the real heart with graph from what I see, sort of thing. Like, they don't care about doing legals. They don't care about any of that shit. They just want to do panels. And that's awesome. Like, even though if I was there, I'd be wanting to bomb on the trains and trying to do that. But that's something, they can't do now. Like, it's they bomb the trains just get taken off and buffed straight away.
Yeah. Even just trackside walls. They don't last too long now either.
Yeah, so even catching the train yesterday from Box Hill to City and just looking at all the walls, and my mates going, this wall gets cleaned. Like, they can't clean these spots because they're too high, so these dudes doing it up high. But the amount of pieces that must just disappear, like within a week or whatever, on these walls. Like,
but the thing is now most of it's documented because of it's easier to document.
Yeah, and it gets put up on the internet. Once it's there, it lasts forever.
Pretty much, yeah. And that is some of the people that are still active I talk to from time to time. They don't even take photos of their own pieces because they know that there's these, street art Instagram people that go around and they document it for you.
Well, that's the same mentality as me when I'm doing my first panels and that, and like I'm expecting those trains to run for a week or two at least, or something. They don't. They last a day. They get acid chucked on it, or we do panels. We did panels up in Hursty with a heap of dudes, and me and Cirque, we didn't have a camera. No one had a camera at that time. Me and Cirque get up the next day, and we woke up late, so we go and try and find these trains, but we couldn't find the train. And no one's going to get a photo of those panels that are done. Even when we did the Jolly One whole car with Brace and Sick and Merritt and that, and Cirque, we didn't get a photo of that either. And that was, half of it was just do it, and then half it was, has anyone got a camera? No. Me, Sink and Hobbit, and one of our mates got bashed in Ringwood, got bashed to death, this dude, Toucan. After he died, I'd smashed trains for about a month or two with his tag, just to throw ups and that, for respect for him. But, and Tame, so me, Hobbit, Sink and Tame, we go into Upper Gully. We have this dude who was one of the Belgrave sort of hippies. He went and cut a hole in the fence, and I'd hardly cut holes in the fence, I'd just jump them, but normally we'd cut a little hole, we'd go through it. This dude went and cut a 6-foot doorway for us just to walk straight in the yard. And we do this Toucan whole car. We finish it, we get out the yard. The next morning we go to Heatherdale, and we're waiting for which is it's a dead station after Ringwood. There was never guards on there. It was just a dead station sort of thing. And the train pulls in, and Sink's getting photos, and we get back to the car, and as we hop in the car, the guard's hanging out the train going, have a busy night last night, boys, and that sort of thing. Fuck, whatever. And it would have looked good in photos, and we get back to the car, and Sink's like, oh, fuck, I didn't wind the film on, because we're using 35mm film, and you had to wind it on, so we lost that train as well. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so now you just think as soon as something is running in any capacity, someone is taking a photo because everyone's got a camera.
Straight away, yeah. People are straight away taking photos now. So, yeah, like I say, everything's sort of documented, especially on trains. If you're doing panels and you don't take a camera in there, your phone in there, whatever. But at the same time, you're taking your phone in there, which is, yeah, GPS could tell whoever where you are, whatever time. And, yeah, there's a risk associated with everything, I suppose. Like, yeah.
If I know you don't like legals, but just say you had a big wall and I said to you, I've got all the paint, I've got a wall. Would you just do like what would you do with it? If I had a wall, I said I want you to do a prod piece here or whatever. You can do anything. Would you just do tags and throwies?
No, do a piece.
You would do a piece?
Yeah, yeah. It's different. Like now, I'm over 50, so yeah, it's a lot different. And being in sort of DMA, MSA, TFA, and that, and PBP, like yeah, I'd have to do a piece. Like, to
No,
show
but I'm
that.
giving you creative control. What would you want to see? Would you want to see tags and throwies, or would you want to see a piece?
Oh, I'd rather see a piece. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. If it was on a train, who knows? You know, I'd still love to see bomb trains, like, but on a wall, it's just a bit different now. I'm a bit older, sort of thing. So yeah, it'd be a piece for sure.
After you sort of took your foot off the pedal a little bit, graffiti does change a lot. Like you mentioned, right? There's a lot of purpose-made graffiti supplies, street art, legal murals. That stuff really takes off, and then the essence of graffiti, it's just not there for you. Your passion's not there, and you just don't think that's the way it is.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty much right. Like, yeah, without the bombing on trains, it was sort of like that's the end of my era, sort of thing. I'll let other dudes take over, and it wasn't just that. It's also getting known on the lines by cops, by transits, by fucking Gumbies. Like, yeah, it just makes it harder, sort of thing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess it is hard, and you get to a point where you sort of hit a ceiling, and you go, well, unless I'm going to put on a fucking balaclava and just run around the town, like how could you get away with doing anything?
And
you can't.
as well as that, the criminal record that's been built up over that time, it just makes it hard. Like I'm getting to the age of 21, sort of thing. Like, do I want to keep doing this and getting in trouble, or do I want to refocus on something else as well at the same time?
Yep.
And there's a lot more legals popping up, like the Dorset Road legal, which goes for about $1,000 or so. That was every second weekend, dudes were going down there, just piecing it, and yeah.
And I'm sure that you find that fun and hanging out there, but at the same time, that's not what the essence of graffiti is to you.
Yeah, and as well as that, it's like when there's bombers who are coming up after us, like pacing that. When he died in early 95. It's like a big chunk out of. That's another person I need bombing if I'm going to be able to bomb. But to bomb trains in 94, 95, like you could do insides, that'd be no worries. But doing the hangouts and doing the stuff we did just was pretty much taken. It wasn't there no more to do. It's a lot harder to do.
Yeah.
You could still, on Comex and that, you could go in between the cars and step on the air conditioner box and do the high hangouts on the side. But yeah, unless you knew, like Pace and No, they showed us how to pop the panel above the doors and switch off the pressure to the doors. So that'd totally just knock off the alarm and all that. So you could do a mass hangout, but then the door's going to be loose, so they're probably going to pull that train off.
And it's dangerous for the punters as well.
Yeah. Oh, man. So, yeah, you see this old rider one day, we go to the pub every Friday and catching the train back, and one of the old riders, he rips out the seal of the door window and pops the window out a little bit, so when some normal dude just hops on the train, leans against that window just falls straight out the train. Like, watching shit like that's funny, but yeah, people... There was this one train in 334 that got wrecked at Louisdale. And, dudes would be ripping up seats, throwing seats out the doors, like 4-seaters and 6-seaters, and they had 4 bolts or 6 bolts, I think, for 6-seater, and just watching all this damage just happen as well. Pretty hectic, some of the things. Like, yeah.
Did you get the damage? Were you about it, or you were just about the tags and the bombing?
popping out windows was sort of fun sometimes, like, yeah, but it was more for me about bombing. On that train, that one from Lewdale, those Lewdale dudes just wreck. I'd be doing the hangouts out of the big command windows, which weren't there. And after a while, I thought, probably not the best idea to keep smashing this train, because this train's going to get taken straight off the line, going to get repaired and buffed, and they're going to be taking photos of those tags that are around in those spots where it's just, so more for me it was about bombing.
Yeah.
Like, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's like the destruction of trains is such an interesting one, because you need the trains, but then people are smashing them, but then you need them, and then they're smashing them. It's like it's a funny cyclical sort of mentality.
There'd be this one dude, and he's talked about a bit, window kicker, and at times would be in Richmond, you'd see a train coming in from the Dandy line and have all the door windows would be popped out, they'd be kicked, they weren't there. You'd watch the next train come in from the Dandy, all the window, and then you watch the next one come in, and he'd hop off it, and we'd all yell out, "Kicker!" And there's something wrong with the dude, but yeah, he was all right. He got that nickname from us, and and when me and Merritt did Jolimont like for 5-6 weeks in a row, my mate Sink and Fiasco, they went in to do the yard, and they just picked the wrong time to do it. Like we'd smashed it for 5-6 weeks. The transit knew it'd get smashed, but at the same time, these two Gone Waverley riders had walked through the yard and smashed so many windows just with train rocks and that in Jolimont. So when Sink and Fiasco in, the DSG's already there because of the windows being smashed, and just grab them straight away. There's a lot of little funny things that happen like that because of the train damage that gets done. But for me, no, it's about bombing. It's just about bombing. Like, whether that be throw ups, insides, hangouts, or a panel or whatever, it was just about that really.
What do you think about the state of graffiti today?
It's different. It's just a completely different scene. But you still see the same heart in people who go out and do it.
Who are you feeling at the moment that's in the last few years?
Well, for me, there's a heap of riders that mentioned, but this one main group, the OGC dudes, I'll keep mentioning them because they put us up, and I'm sort of mates with a couple of them. Like, So, but their standards of doing things are different from mine. So, but they've heard stories about what it did and all that. So, it's just different.
What do you think about this sort of abseiling shit that's happening, man? Because that is crazy.
I've seen some of that. That's crazy. Mad. It's fucking mad. And the style that these dudes get as well when they're doing it, it's just, for me, a mate explained how they were doing it, and I was like, oh fuck, that's how it's done. Like, it's fucking mad. Like, level. Yeah. And that's what it sort of is. Like when it's taken off the trains, it went to walls, streets, and now it's dudes doing whole sides of buildings and that, like, and just nuts.
But that is like one door closes, another door opens. Like, so you know, once they do over fucking police the carriages and the stations, it goes like graffiti sort of was held at the station and on the trains and the track sides, and once you over police that, it goes somewhere else.
It goes somewhere else, and then and once they figure out what's going on there, they'll catch on to that, and it'll move somewhere else.
But you think about it now, when you drive down the freeway, you see so many freeway spots. 20 years ago, when the lines weren't as overly policed, that you wouldn't see all those freeway spots.
Yeah, there might be dudes might have throw-ups and shit down the freeways, but there'd be fuck all pieces. And
now it's like a gallery when you drive down.
We'd be reading about the LA freeways and that sort of thing, how bombed they are, and New York, how it jumped off from the trains and went on the streets and everywhere else. And that's where it sort of goes. Like, for us it was about trains, or for people like me it was about trains, and that was sort of it. Like, and you'd bomb where you went, like you'd bomb the suburbs and that sort of thing, but you'd be more focused on the line because that's where a lot of kids are sort of bombing. That's where me as a kid I was bombing, so that's where everyone sort of saw it. And now people driving that get a lot older when they're doing graph as well. It's not just around this teenage to early 20s sort of thing. It's now gone. Some dudes are doing it in their 30s and their 40s. Like, it's just nuts.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's always going to keep evolving and things again. It doesn't matter how much you try and stop something like that. I think it's just going to push it into a different direction.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, that's how it is.
Riding on other people's property is always going to be.
Yeah, so we wouldn't really bomb people's private people's houses and that sort of thing unless it was on the train tracks. Like it's just unfortunate for them. But yeah, now it's gone to sides of buildings and yeah, it's just moved on. It really has.
Yeah, and I don't think it's ever going to stop. When I hear these sort of like graffiti programs, there's like the new mayor of Melbourne's like, we're going to stamp out graffiti. You're like, you're not, because it's just going to move it somewhere else.
Yeah, and you're always going to get young naive kids who come out and who'll smash shit until they get picked up for it. Yeah. So until they learn, oh shit, I can't do this. You're always going to have that younger generation coming up and then finding new ways and new places to go and to do this. And with the paint shops and that as well, it sort of encourages that to a point. Like that's for sure. Like, yeah.
It's like, I'm guessing you probably appreciate this sort of new generation of kids that are doing graffiti in the old-fashioned way with like the way that they don't use the stock nozzles. It all looks a bit raw and rough.
Yeah.
You like that?
Yeah, but these days you got all the different fat caps, and that just, when they came out, that just changed the dynamics of graph so much. There were riders who were using fat caps back in the 90s and that, but there were very few riders. And like when the German dudes would come out, they bring a supply of fat caps for people, but only the sort of top echelon of riders those sort of people got them. For us, we were using skinny nozzles. It took us somewhere between, say, 2 and 4 hours, or maybe 1.5 to 4 hours to do a panel on a train. And these days, dudes can run in now and do a panel in 20 minutes. Yeah, with double blasting. Yeah.
Yeah, you look at some of that European stuff, they're attacking it with like militant fucking operation sort of thing with multiple people coming at multiple angles and it's nuts.
Yeah, so even one day when Lumet was over from Germany and that, and he was staying up at a friend's house in Belgrave, all the PBP, I went up there, all the PBP dudes, we were all like, let's go out do panel, and he's like, not too many people, I'm scared, rah. And we're like, we'll cover you, we'll tell you where to go, just follow us, like, we won't let you get dicked. But he was like, not coming out. We went out that night, I think 2 dudes did the platform that he topped to bottoms at Belgrave, but there's about 13, 14 of us on just one train doing nearly every carriage all along the train. And if we had done background in that, it would have been a window down, whole train sort of thing. But these days, with all the cameras, with everything, it's a lot harder to do that. So the time we'd spend there, they don't have these days. And then you've got drones as well, and everything. It's just, it's a lot different.
It is a lot different, but like I said, I don't think it's going to stop. And that sort of, we need to stop graffiti mentality, they need to fucking come up with a different plan.
They'll put a halt to a lot, but they won't stop it. Like whenever there's a clean wall, people are going to go, wicked clean wall, let's go do it. Like and whether it be tags or a piece or a filled-in throw-up or whatever, it's just what they want to do and what risks they want to take these days. But this is where I like these dudes who are just doing panels, and they're just going out and doing panels every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, sort of thing. And they'll send us a photo through all that every now and then, and I'll just be like, fucking sick, keep it up, like, because that's the spirit that I can sort of associate with, like. But they're out doing freeways and that sort of thing heaps, like you said, like you drive down the freeway, it's just fucking smashed.
We weren't seeing that 20 years ago. No way.
No, like, and it's just nuts. I sort of think, how the fuck do they do that with all these cars cruising by and they just don't care? They just have that naive, reckless sort of attitude. Like, maybe not so naive, but they'll take that chance, and the same dudes up everywhere, sort of all around the city. Like, it's crazy. Nuts. Yeah.
As we sort of come to start to wrap it up, man, is there anything that you want to get off your chest? Anything you want to say? Anyone you want to shout out? Anyone you want to tell to get fucked? Anything you want to kind of say?
I really want to diss anyone on this. Like,
fair enough.
people, they do their bit. Like, there's no point creating new beefs or anything.
No.
I know. Just shout out to all the crews like TFA, DMA, MSA, PBP, TDC. This new crew, IGC, they're smashing shit. I love that. And just all my mates and that. I suppose I could go through fucking 50 names or something of people, but I won't. Yeah.
You definitely could. And look, we could. I'm sure we could talk for 6 hours, but we talked for 2 hours.
Yeah.
I think
There's a bit come out. Yeah.
a fair bit has. And look, like with any guest that's fucking interesting, and you're definitely one of those. Man, I'm more than happy for you to come back and say more stuff, and maybe there's stuff that we missed, and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, maybe an add-on or something. I could talk about some of the missions and that we went on back in the day. Different bombing partners and how we bombed, and there's heaps. I mean, there's 4 years of just straight bombing. Yeah,
and that's the idea. What I want to do with this podcast is have episodes like we sort of go on your chronological journey, but then next time you come back, we might just focus on what happened. What happened for this year. You know what I mean? Let's talk about stories and break it down. Because if we broke down everything, we'd be talking here for 8 hours.
Easy. Like with all the shit that I've got written down that I've jotted down over the years, so I can just remind myself of this. Even last night, I'm thinking, fuck this, like, all these stories, but there's just not enough time, I think, to go through, and people just get utterly bored by the end of it, I think.
No, but man, I think it'd be awesome for you to come back again. We could focus on some specific stories, and we can do it down the track in a few months' time if you're down.
Yeah, could do that. Yeah, for sure. It's been mad, yeah.
Prod, thanks for coming in, man. I appreciate it.
No, it's wicked, mate. Cheers for having us, and let me tell a bit. It's been fucking awesome. Yeah.
Before we wrap it up, who would you like to see here telling their stories?
Old dudes like Mist, and maybe some of the DMA dudes, the AC dudes, the proper AC dudes, that is, and there's heaps of dudes. Maybe some of the old riders who were around way before me to tell their bits, and like. Yeah.
It is hard for me to convince riders to do it because it goes against the natural essence of what a rider is, to sit down and just talk to someone for a while. But I appreciate you doing it, and every time a rider comes on, I think it makes it a bit easier for some other ones to go, yeah, I might do that too.
Yeah, definitely that, and it puts pieces to the puzzle, which you sort of need these background information on what I did, what dudes before me did for sure, and then what dudes after me did, just to fill in the spots, because the scene changes, it'll keep changing, it'll keep evolving to something different, and there's so many stories from so many people, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. All right, man, I appreciate you coming in. I can't wait for you to chuck some tags in the black book there as well, man.
No, cheers. Yeah, it's been mad. Thanks for having us. Yeah.
All right, Prada, thanks for coming, man. I'll wrap it up and we'll hit the book and have something to eat. What do you reckon?
Yeah, cool.
Cheers.
Thousand.